I've made a goal for myself to donate $100 million in my lifetime. When we purchased the building, the rents were like $43,000 a month.
220 units, net worth of like $18 million, no partners, $100,000 a month in cash flow.
We bought it for 300 and I think 65,000 or something like that. And we just sold it for $1 million. We hit the wave of Airbnb at the right time, right? So I recognized the opportunity, which was 2014. We bought our first house on the Cape. And at the time, we bought it for like our family. And my mom and my wife wanted to use it as a family vacation house. And I saw the opportunity and I said, let's try to rent it out.
Welcome back to the Capital Conversations podcast. My name is AJ Smith, and today we have an impressive story of someone who came to the United States as a child and now has over $100,000 a month in cash flow. This is the story of Mike Preshman. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, AJ, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. How's it going?
So, yeah, it's great to have you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. And I know our audience will get a lot of value from you. You were born outside of the United States. Would you just tell us kind of the story of what it was like as a child?
Sure. So I was born in Ukraine. Basically, so I was a kid. So I came here when I was 9. So as a kid, kind of growing up, kind of pretty normal childhood. You know, I was, basically my dad passed away when I was young. So it kind of changed things when I was 7. So kind of moved to America. As a result of that, basically, I had family in America. My mom wanted kind of the land of opportunity. Entrepreneurship was kind of, not entrepreneurship, but like, land of opportunity. And so, we moved to America when I was 9. And so kind of, there's kind of like the before and after, right? So when I came to America, I was kind of trying to help my mom kind of establish life here. And so she was working a couple of jobs until she kind of established herself as a professional. So I kind of, went to school and, had, as a regular kind of immigrant, went through bullying and went through kind of my own challenges growing up. But eventually kind of aspired to become something more. And so my mom, always kind of being from Eastern Europe, was very focused on math and science. And so, she really wanted me to go to like MIT and just really focus on kind of the traditional studious academic route. And so I really did kind of pursue that. I was very passionate about school once I got to college. So I went to Northeastern undergrad, I went to Harvard grad, and so I did computer science. And so I was very passionate about, I think, I wanted to become the next, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg. Like I really thought I could start a company. I met startup incubator, Paul Graham, and kind of the Y Combinator, movement at Northeastern when I was young. And so I really wanted to start a company and kind of build wealth that way. And I tried a couple times and I failed. And so kind of at that point, I was very hungry. And I eventually kind of ended up the real estate route. And so I'm kind of glad to get into that, but that's kind of the condensed journey of how I got into, the passion, the hunger, the immigration, the single mom, and kind of the land of opportunity, and then eventually ending up with real estate.
What did your mom do?
My mom was, she was a computer kind of science. So she worked as an analyst in a hospital. She worked, basically as a computer programmer, right? So she and, she had a undergrad and grad in mathematics and kind of became a computer scientist. Now she teaches math for kids. She's retired, but she kind of teaches math in the Boston area at RSM, Russian School of Mathematics. But so she was a professional, right? So she made decent money, and so she really wanted me to kind of become, take that path. And so I think from Eastern Europe and kind of a lot of her friends and what was expected was to follow in those footsteps, right? And basically become a professional and follow the corporate hierarchy, right? Like become a good programmer, become a senior programmer, principal programmer, become a manager, become a director. Like that was kind of the path that she foresaw for me. And I was kind of on that path. Like that's what I was doing. It was, but I saw the light, right? When I was kind of in my 30s, I kind of saw the light that eventually I was going to burn out. Eventually, I was not going to be able to motivate myself to keep learning, keep competing with kids coming out of college. That's kind of the reason why I really was always looking for other ways to engage and to kind of have my own business.
Right. Yeah. And so there's a lot of professionals, it sounds like, that maybe you were exposed to as a kid, your mom being one of those especially. I'm curious, kind of, how did you land on the Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, rather than trying to, like you said, work your way up through the hierarchy? It sounds like, especially maybe a while ago, a lot of opportunity and decently paying jobs for those. So what caused you to start thinking about, like, man, I want to start something of my own. I actually want to own the company rather than just work and be paid pretty well for it.
So I think not having, so my dad passed away when I was young. So kind of not having, being the man of the house, if you will, right? So I saw entrepreneurship or, as a way to build wealth, right? So I really wanted I wanted something more, right? So I didn't just want to have a regular kind of life. I wanted independence. I wanted freedom. I wanted, I wanted to live a big life. And so I saw entrepreneurship as obviously, one of the ways to do that. And so there was like this website, Hacker News, and I just saw, all the glamour, all the updates, kind of people, and you obviously only see the updates once people succeed. And so kind of the Instagram, life sort of. And so I really kind of, I was hooked on that, right? So I kind of saw the stories, saw people's success, followed that. And so I thought that maybe that's something that I could do, right? And since I was a programmer and I was a pretty decent programmer, I believed, like every programmer thinks that they're kind of God's gift to, the programming world. I thought that I had it in me to do something like that. With that said, when I started a couple of companies and I started doing the work and I started engaging with the business and I was part of a couple of incubators, the glamour is not, day to day. It's a lot of work. It's very unpredictable and not guaranteed, right? And so, basically, I worked on a startup for like 2 years of my own and got nothing out of it, right? So there was no success, there was no exit, there was nothing, right? But during that time, right, and so I really didn't even understand what success meant. I just thought, I have my own business, and so it was exciting, it was all that kind of stuff. But yeah, and so I think Bill Gates was obviously Bill Gates. He's the richest man in the world, So I kind of had this, maybe it wasn't a realistic belief, but it was something that I wanted to do stuff. I was always a tinkerer. I like to try stuff. I always like to, I read tons of books. I'm always thinking about stuff, and so I found it interesting. Whereas just kind of regular work and working for somebody, I get bored easily, right? And so ironically, even with what I do now, I'm always kind of in the back of my mind, I'm like, when am I going to get bored of this? Or like, what's the next thing, right? So I haven't thankfully yet gotten bored, but I'm always kind of predicting based on my previous patterns, is this too eventually going to get boring, right? But so far it hasn't, and so I'm pretty pleased.
What do you think has pushed you to continue to grow and obviously you've got a substantial real estate portfolio now, sure. But what do you think's pushed you to grow? Is it a desire for, like a yacht or a really nice house or a car, or is it just like having resources available? Is there something that sure. is kind of a why driving what you're doing? Yeah,
that's a big question. And I think about this a lot. So I've gone through evolutions of this, and I feel like I'm because I read a lot, I think a lot, which I'm sure people do, like I'm not giving myself too much credit here, but I've avoided midlife crisis because I've been able to preempt kind of like thinking through this, right? And so basically whenever I get to a point where, the question why comes up, I feel like I'm ahead of the game a little bit because I already thought about this ahead. And so I foresaw that money's just not going to buy you happiness, or, 200 plus units is not going to buy you happiness, right? And so I've always kind of put myself in that, it doesn't mean that, so I'll give you an example, right? So this past summer, I took my family to Europe for 6 weeks. And so it was amazing. Like we were in Spain, we were in Switzerland. Like it was a very kind of what you would dream your vacation would be like, and with your family, and we met up with friends, and I brought my mom and all this kind of stuff, right? With that said, 4 weeks into it, maybe 3 weeks into it, I started getting bored. Like, and I was kind of, we had just the most amazing, but you walk, past all these beautiful stores, and you go to the beach and you eat in these restaurants, and eventually it gets old, right? Eventually, there's only so much indulgence that you can, bring on yourself, and then eventually, kind of you get bored, or you're kind of like, well, I need that hustle, or why am I doing this, or what's the
quick question? So, you said you took your family with you, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mentioned that. Yeah.
Were they getting bored? Or
no, I don't know. I mean, I think it's just, I have little kids. My kids are 8 and 5, and so, they would go to different camps, and I don't know if they were getting bored. It's not bored, but it is kind of like there's only so much right, like this every day you get up and you go and you live this amazing kind of beautiful scenery and all this kind of, and eventually you're like, all right, I had enough, right? And so I wrestled with this question a little bit, and I stumbled upon this book that I've been recommending to a lot of people. It's called Hero on a Mission. And so the premise of this book is basically that kind of like when we're younger, we're given the kind of like the journey is predictable, right? So we go to school, we finish high school, we finish college, then we get married, we have kids, we get a career, all this kind of stuff. And then eventually, kind of midlife, we reach this juncture where you start having to come up with your own goals, right? It's no longer, right? It starts, once you reach that kind of like, let's say at the age of 40 and you have a career and you have kids and all this kind of stuff, like at that point, it's up to you to define what your life means, right? Kind of like the second mountain or whatever you want to call it, right? And so Hero on a Mission basically defines that as you transform when you go through challenges, and in challenges, in that transformation, you derive meaning and happiness, right? And so for me, like one of the exercises in this book is actually to write your own eulogy, right? And so I wrote my own eulogy, and I kind of processed in the eulogy that, like, what do I want people to say about me? And so, one of the things, obviously a lot more matters what people say than, like how many yachts you have or how many cars you drive or all that kind of stuff. It's, were you a good father? Were you a good husband? Or all those kinds of things, right? And then, like, did you make donations? Like, did you contribute to society? Were you a leader in your community? All those kinds of things, right? And so it kind of puts forth those kinds of things. And so for me, for example, it drove me to define kind of meaningful, challenging goals, right, that I want to pursue. So for example, so if I want to say, I want to become a billionaire, which is not my goal, but let's just say I did, right? That would be a very, very challenging goal. And the goal in itself would be very challenging and, to me, profound, even though the actual reaching it is not the goal, right? So it's the pursuit of that goal, which then, right, and then you can define what do you want to do with that goal, which is maybe you want to donate $100 million, maybe you want to donate $500 million to certain causes that you care about, right? And so now you're on this journey and you're a hero on this mission, right? And so it's not just about reaching a certain net worth, because then that's meaningless, right? That doesn't do anything. But if you reach a certain net worth that allows for you to donate money or to, share with your community or, et cetera, right? And so now through that you have meaning, you're impacting people, you're growing, but through that you're growing, right? You're learning and you're figuring out, well, what would it take for me to become this person, or what would it take for me to, right? And so for me, that's become kind of like, I've made a goal for myself to donate $100 million in my lifetime, for example, right? So I'm nowhere near that. So for now, it's I'm getting all the credit without any of the work, right? So I'm going to donate $100 million. I haven't donated $1 million yet, but so that would be like a nice pursuit, right? And so that's a goal that I'd like to pursue. And so then you set yearly goals, and so for me, it's add $50,000 worth of cash flow in the next 2 years, for example, right? So that would be a meaningful goal. Now, in a smaller, right, there are certain things that even with the cash flow that I have, right, like I don't allow myself to fly private, or like there's a lot of coaching programs and masterminds and all these kinds of stuff that are quite expensive, right? That would be fun to join, right? I'd like to get to the point where I can just do things to grow, to share without thinking about it too much, right? And so I'm not. So that's for my personal, like, what would I do with that money? It's not that I'm aspiring for a Lamborghini or yacht, although, like if you're doing $100 million and I mean, a Lamborghini is a little too much, like just because that's not my style. But sometimes you can treat yourself and enjoy the fruits of your labor. But that's kind of, and so I'm enjoying the challenges that come along the way and figuring out the path to get there. But it is a question that I think about a lot, and it used to be something different. It used to be kind of reach financial independence. It used to be, but now it's other things. But at the core, for me, it's always been kind of freedom and security. For me, that's, I don't ever want to jeopardize what I have to attain something I don't need. And I don't ever want to risk having to go back to a 9-to-5 or, so like, I want to make sure that and then like, what do you leave for your kids and all that? That's a completely different question, which is, that's a whole different story. Yeah.
There are two things that came into my mind as you were speaking. Number one is the hero's journey, and number two is eliminating things in order to improve your life. So the first thing I wanted to say is the hero on a mission, that kind of invokes the hero's journey archetype, right? Kind of
yes.
Classic storytelling.
It's exactly that. It's
yeah. Which is essentially, for those who are listening who don't know, essentially like many of almost all of the great stories out there. Lord of the Rings, right? Frodo Baggins meets Gandalf, and then he finds out about this ring and he has to take it to Mount Doom and all these different things, right? Frodo changes as a character somewhat throughout that journey, and that changes kind of the story as well. But the idea of the hero's journey is like, you have someone who starts in a certain state, and then an event happens. They have to head into like the underworld, right? So they have to go and face their challenges, and then in order to defeat the challenges, they have to change. And if they don't change, they don't defeat the challenge. But it's a hero story, so they usually do. But they change to meet the challenge, and then they come back to the real world, right? And now they're engaging with the real world in a different way. So what you're talking about, the hero on a mission, I think, I'm 26, so I've got friends who, we left college recently, and it's kind of like, well, what do we do now? You were on this railroad track and you knew exactly what you needed to do, and you need to get good grades and get a good job and blah, blah, blah. And then your job starts telling you that you need to do these certain things in order to be successful. So kind of you get on that track. But like you were saying, there comes a point where you're starting to wonder, like, what is it all for, right? Like, kind of, why am I doing this? Does it even matter? And so I even have friends right now at my age that are starting to feel that, like, what am I doing, right? But
this book is phenomenal for this. Like, it was, I read it like 4 months ago. I recommended it to a bunch of people, and I'm in this other mastermind group, and somebody recommended it in that group, and this group Go Abundance, and like somebody recommended it, and it's just like a really, like, you read it, it's very inspiring, and it just gets you like, and so whether it's you hike Mount Everest, whether you start a podcast, but it's just, you overcome some challenge, right? You build certain skills, and and then you use that as leverage to do other stuff. And so then it's in the doing and the transforming that you find the meaning and the passion. And so that's what's exciting, not because the goal is, I'll give you like one, maybe two like examples of from Mallorca. So I was in Mallorca, Spain over the summer. And so there was one example, right? And we rented like a small little boat, like, to go with my family. We drive by these like massive yachts, right? These like yachts, like Oprah Winfrey was like there that week, or just massive, like $100 million yachts, right? And so I'm floating very close to it, and I see it's just, the owner of the yacht, or the owners, they're just reading a book on deck, right? And you just they're still human. They're still, like, once you reach that level of wealth, you're still, right? So it's what's up here, like what you think about, right? Like, so in fact, sometimes I think a lucky man is somebody who has something to think about in the shower, right? If you have something that you're brewing and thinking, right, like about something like that. Like, I remember when I was doing computer science, I would basically have homework, right? And so I would just, I couldn't figure out some problem, and I would just think, it was just, that's all I needed. Like, I was passionate. That's just right. That consumed my mind. I was excited to figure it out. I was, just, and so, and so I realized, like, on that yacht, like, they're no different, right? It's just, like, you get all that money, but if that's all you want, like, but when you give, or when you're achieving something, I'm sure achieving that yacht was fantastic, but then, sharing that experience, but otherwise indulging, you get tired of indulging. Another one was, like, we went to this, like, restaurant. It was like white glove, like, drinks, like, also in Mallorca, and everything is perfect. It's just literally perfect. Like, Instagram perfect. Everything is just, it could not be any more perfect. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, if I had another $1 million in my pocket, or $1 billion, like, nothing could change. Like, there's nothing extra that would be, and so therefore, like, the pursuit of, at some point, right? The pursuit of, once you meet your bare needs, like, then it's a different game, and you have to redefine that game, or you're gonna be miserable, right? So, right. But that said, I'm always figuring it out, right? So, in 5 years,
as you figured it out, I'm sure, like, a lot of people think additively when they think of self-improvement or personal development, or, sure. How do I become the person that I need to be in order to get to the place where I accomplish these goals, right? They think additively. They think, like, I need to add things into my life or start doing more things. Was there anything that was actually subtractive? Did you focus on taking certain things out of your life in order to reach the point where you are now? And also, past that, are there things that you think you need to take out of your life to hit the next level of your goals?
Whoa, unprepared for that one. That's a tough one. I'm gonna try to think of a good answer right now. I think it's a very valuable question to ponder. I'm sure that like, if you go to Tony Robbins or something, that'll be one of the questions they'll ask you. But as in, like, I think that's a very good question. One of the things, sometimes you have to make room. Like you probably see, like, I have books, like all around. Like my whole house is like filled with books. I go to, I have like 1,200 books on Audible, and like I go to Barnes and Noble. I probably should stop, right? So basically, I have too many books, and then eventually, right? So I've started trying to be more, like maybe use ChatGPT or like to kind of like summarize books, or eliminate, those kinds of things. I'm pretty selective about what conferences maybe I'll go to, and kind of what content you consume. There's a lot of content. The challenge with content and conferences and books and so forth is that you don't know where that spark, or where that extremely, right? You just don't know, right? None of us know the answer, right? None of us know the answers to most questions, right? We're all kind of like going through life in the dark. And so, I have a model that I use that's helped me very, a lot in life, that I got from poker, which is kind of like a probabilistic model of did you ever play poker? Do you play poker? But
I've played poker before, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
So
not
for
good
me,
at it,
probabilistic value, expected value, and that nothing is deterministic is kind of how I go through life, right? And so I basically, like, I don't know the answer, but I just kind of always making bets about what I think is the right, and then you just go with it, right? And so if you make a calculated decision and then it turns out to be wrong, like, that's okay, because you still made the right decision with the information that you had at the time, and then you can kind of keep going. And so then if you get really good at this, then over time, just like in poker, any given day you can lose, but in the long run, you're probably going to do pretty well, right? And so back to your original question, like, I guess I try to, my schedule, in some ways, like, I think being busy and having a lot of things on your plate is a blessing, because they say, like, a healthy person has 1,000 problems, but a sick person has one, right? So I'd much rather have 1,000 problems. And so being engaged in kind of like being excited about a lot of stuff, and sometimes it's too much. Like I have a lot of ideas. I want to pursue a lot of stuff. I want to try a lot of things. And so that means you're kind of like hungry for life, right? And so you're, I haven't figured out a solution for fear of missing out. Like I think that's still a thing, right? So and that's part of the reason why I have all these books, is because I have a fear of missing out what's in that book, and that it might have the answer that. So I don't have a great answer. Was
there anything that you had to change in your life, from when you bought your first property to when you scaled to 220 units, in terms of like who you are? Is there anything that you had to change in terms of like how you approach problems, or how you approach your day, or how you approach other people?
Yeah, I think my philosophy is kind of like, make good decisions, and then you're kind of like planting seeds, right? You plant seeds, and so I buy for cash flow, and I buy for holding for 10, 20 years, right? So I don't sell, basically never. I basically never sell, unless, it really appreciated in value and 1031 exchange. So I've sold a couple of times, but basically I try to buy and hold and let the property appreciate. If I have to, I'll refinance out of it. But for the most part, I try to keep the leverage relatively low, if I can, and hold it for cash flow. And so then kind of I'm protected against the downside. And so given that, I try to, there's a lot of things that I try to improve on. So I want to be a better manager. I want to be a better leader. All those kinds of things, right? But I also keep my team pretty lean. And so I try to focus on the salient problems, right? So basically, not every detail is perfect, but I've kind of learned to let go. Right, and I've kind of learned to accept the imperfection of my business. And basically, there's a quote that I heard somewhere, which is that every business is a dumpster fire. Some just happen to make money. And so I just kind of think of it that way, is that I'll get a lot of, like if I get a consultant or somebody looked at my business, right, they might be like, oh, you should do this and this and this and this, and they might be right, but within that, like I have something that's kind of working, and I'm kind of doing my thing. And so, like, if somebody else might look at it and say, I would do it totally differently, or they would say, you need to hire more virtual assistants, or you need to outsource everything, you need to hire a COO, or you have to, right? But for me, it's just, sometimes I still go to court. Sometimes, I forget to pay some bills, or whatever. Like, so it's imperfect. But in the long run, as long as you buy the right buildings and the rents keep going up or stay stable or whatever, right? Like and the revenue is, good amount. There's a margin between the revenue and the expenses plus debt service, right? You have enough, and then you stay conservative. So you kind of, instead of buying yachts or what have you, right? You would put the money back into real estate. And that's part of it, right? Is because I'm so imperfect, I'm trying to build that margin to be very, very large so that I don't have to be perfect, right? So basically, the reason why I want to have 50,000 more in cash flow is so that I can continue to make bad decisions, right? And not have to worry about it, right? So that's kind of, right? So I'm focused on those kinds of things. There's probably a lot of things operationally that I could do better, like asset management. We have some third-party property management, and we work with this property management company, and we had about a year ago, we had a little bit of a disagreement, and I pushed back on them a little bit too hard, and they kind of basically, we had a little bit of a falling out when things were going pretty well, I thought. And so since then, I kind of learned to not be as detail-oriented and just kind of because my options were either switch to somebody else or accept that they don't want to be micromanaged and figure out a different way to work with them. And so I've accepted that and kind of stepped back a little bit. And so somebody could look at that and say, hey, it's your business, you should fire them, and but I kind of evaluated my options and evaluated that this is probably the right thing for me to do right now, right? And so I think that was kind of me being patient, and maybe when I was younger, maybe I would have been a little bit more of a, try to prove that I'm the man and this is my business, and would have kind of, whereas now maybe it's more important not to be right, but to get it right. And so I'm less ego driven a little bit.
So you mentioned your team, and you like to keep your team pretty small, pretty tight. Who's on your team? Do you have virtual assistants? Do you have people in person? Is it mostly just you? What does that look like?
Yeah, so my wife, she was reluctant, but 3 years ago she quit her job. she was director of marketing, and I needed help, and I only trusted her. Well, not only trust, but money and all this kind of stuff. So she quit her job, and so we work together. She's basically the COO, if you will, right? So she does all of the paying the bills, oversees the leasing, a lot of the maintenance stuff. So she kind of day to day. I'm very involved, but she's kind of without her, none of the bills would get paid, none of the checks would get deposited, all that kind of stuff, right? So she's really, running the show on that front, and then I focus more on the vision, the acquisitions, all the other stuff. So everything, business strategy, new initiatives, still we work together, but that's kind of her focus. And then we have a couple of virtual assistants. One is focused on leasing, and then one is focused on property management, so maintenance and that kind of stuff. And so my plan is in the new year to hire a person dedicated to acquisitions. So I haven't bought anything in 8 months. We haven't closed anything, and so I'm starting to get a little antsy. and so I'm starting to kind of doing some direct mail, and just kind of creating a strategy around how to buy more assets, how to get to the next level. And that's a whole different, what I'm looking at and all this kind of stuff. There's multifamily. I'm also trying to do more commercial stuff. So I'm looking at a lot of different ways to kind of get to the next where I want to get to. But yeah, so that's basically it. And then we work. We have a full-time maintenance person. So he's basically full-time, right? So he works. He goes building to building every day. He's just doing different stuff, right? And so then, if there's something that he can't do, then we'll hire somebody else, or we'll subcontract. But most of the stuff gets done by him. And then we have a couple of third-party property management companies. So out of 220 units, I would say about half we manage, and about half is third party. And so for example, asset management, that's kind of my focus with them, or not focus, but so I take care of that. But that's very imperfect, right? So raising rents, we bought a 40-unit building almost a year ago, and so we've been raising rents. When we purchased the building, the rents were $43,000 a month, and so now they're 51, And so my goal is to get it to like 55, but it's just kind of like a process, and you're working with like different housing programs, Section 8, and it's a process. And if you like, I've tried different strategies for like, Notion and getting things done, and I've tried everything. And so, none of it is perfect. And so you just kind of, there's just stuff to do. And then some days you get a lot done, and in fact, some days when I don't get a lot done, but I think about big things, I feel more productive than when I sit down and I get like a lot of stuff done, but then it feels like you got nothing done because you just got to, and then you just go, why even bother? Why even bother working?
It sounds like you and your wife have the integrator visionary relationship inside of Traction, and she's the integrator and you're more the visionary.
I would say so. I don't want to define a role for her because I don't want to see, like, I don't see this as like jobs. I see this as like not a colleague, but like it's our business. Never in a million years did I think that I would end up doing what I do. So I feel blessed every day. This is kind of like, I started out with bigger pockets, like a lot of people, and, was listening to every episode and Brendan Turner, all that kind of stuff. So for me to actually realize, and it's still a work in progress, but to realize this vision, there's obviously plenty of challenges, and but I try not to give her an explicit role because I don't want to upset her.
What have you had to learn about leadership as your team has grown? I would assume as you were, initially buying properties, maybe smaller multifamily properties, 20 units, your first 20 units, it was just you and maybe a property management company. But now you've added people to your team, you've brought your wife in. How have you changed as a leader in that time frame? What are some of the things that you've had to learn or maybe changed a little bit?
I would say that the main one is accept imperfection. So for me, like my contractor, my maintenance guy, whatever you want to call him. So he's like a jack of all trades. He'll get everything that he's like super strong. He's, but there's just a lot of stuff that he'll do imperfectly, very imperfectly. And where, sometimes he'll go and he'll do maintenance, and then he'll leave a mess, and like, I'll get a call from the tenant that like, blah, blah, blah. Or he'll like, like right now he's renovating an apartment for like a program that is like a housing program sort of, but it's like this arrangement where and he was like smoking in the unit while they still have their furniture, and like I got a call from whatever, right? So you just this kind of stuff. And so I'll call and I'll scream at him, right? But then I also know that I weigh out the pros and cons, and I'm kind of like, he's still a very viable option. He shows up to work every day. He gets the job done, and you kind of you live the good with the bad, right? So that's a big one. So patience. I think from a leadership standpoint, one of the things that I have learned about myself is that for me, like the vision comes from like a place of like peak state. So if I'm feeling inspired, that's where I will like write down kind of like my vision, right? So basically, like if I go for, this is like an extreme example, but I always think about like if you could one time a year, like I don't do drugs, right? But like if one time a year you can take some kind of a drug that gives you like a 2-hour period where you just feel euphoric, and you create this vision that discounts any fear, it's just, you're just unrealistic, right? Like, I mean, which by the way, I think a lot of probably CEOs or like Steve Jobs with LSD or whatever, right? So there's probably some elements of people leverage this, right? But basically, if you can create your peak state from a place of optimism and a euphoric kind of vision and feeling, right? And then when you implement it, doesn't matter that you don't feel like doing it, right? So for me, I try to do that as much as I can. So without drugs, but like if I'm feeling really inspired, like whether it's music, I go for a walk, I go rocking like and I come back and you take off that backpack and you feel good, right? You just, right. So in those periods, that's when I would like to, create that vision. And then day to day, when you don't feel like doing it, when your kids are making a lot of noise, and when you're tired and kind of the day-to-day stress takes over, you still know what your North Star is.
Have you found a way? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say,
drugs.
Yeah, exactly. Have you found a way to get that feeling consistently, where like this is my habit, this is my routine, I do this and this
Yeah.
and this, and then I get in a peak state and I can have like a good rest of my day. Have you found a way to do that, or is it still kind of trying to figure that out?
It's a myriad of things. I mean, overall, it's just like, it's biochemistry in your head. Like, how do you feel? So, I mean, a lot of it is just like predictable, kind of like the gym. Going for a walk in nature is fantastic. Cold showers are amazing. Coffee is really good. Yeah, so like I think meditation. So meditation is a big one. So I try to meditate as much as I can, but it's usually like 10 minutes a day. But I set a goal for myself, like a half an hour. That probably has never happened, but that's kind of that would be a nice thing to do.
Do you do a guided meditation? Do you have more of a mantra?
I don't have a mantra. I think I just do silent meditation. So just kind of follow the breath and just. But sometimes there's if I feel inspired, or I like Headspace and other kinds of stuff that I've tried. But those, in general, I very strongly believe in meditation. But you have to stick with it, and you have to do it, and because the whole point of meditation is to accept. Like you're doing it to feel good, but the whole point is you don't care how you feel. You're just observing whatever's coming up, right? So that's a little bit of a paradox, which is hard to accept. But yeah, so there's those kinds of things that if you go to a place which has like a beautiful scenery and you feel inspired, right? If you go into the mountains, if you go to so the view of the ocean, whatever, right? So from there, I try to the opposite of that is that if I'm not feeling great, I don't try to create a vision, right? So I don't try to think of things, right? So if I'm feeling exhausted or down or anxious or any of those things, then I try to kind of put that aside and then kind of wait till and then I leverage the time to create that vision, right? So I do that. I try to do that daily as well as weekly and monthly and so forth. So I kind of leverage those times, and then I use that inspiration to guide me and guide to kind of. So I'm feeling inspired, then I'll, share that with my wife. And so we have a pretty small team, but we have a lot of conversations. Yeah.
Yeah. And something that I've noticed amongst high performers like yourself is even though there may be people that are doing the same thing, right? Like you mentioned, you're looking for new deals and
Sure.
You may be sending direct mail. Even though there may be a ton of people sending direct mail, sometimes the highest performers aren't necessarily doing something different. They're more so changing like what's going on mentally inside of them, inside their team, and that changes their approach to their work and maybe how long they can do it or how much they can do it or how well they can do it, and that improves their results. I don't know if you've seen that with kind of your state changes and that kind of thing, but I've seen that in some other high performers too, where it's like, okay, they may have the same skill level, they may be doing the same thing, but this person doesn't get frazzled when things go wrong, and this person does, and this person is the one that wins because they can just stick to the plan, stick to the mission, keep going.
Right, 100%. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different. There's a lot of, again, it's like the probabilistic, non-predictable nature of this thing is that like you could get the edge because you're just really extroverted and just like on the phone, you just really hit it off with the seller, right? It could be that you're more persistent and you're just really good at that. It could be that you could somehow be more analytical and outsmart because you figure out that like the next Starbucks is going in this region and you figured that out because of some data that you wrote some algorithm, or it could be because you went out for coffee with the real estate broker that works at Starbucks that informed you that this is their strategy and you have that, right? So and it could be any other retailer, or you figured out that the strategy is to call every city hall and find out what their building permits count is, and you're tracking that over the course of the last 12 months, and you see a pattern that certain whatever path of progress looks like this, right? So there's so many, and so there's so much data, and it's so imperfect, and who knows where population is going to grow, where population is going to dip, where the demand is going to go, where the demand is going to grow, but the building permit count is going to exceed that, and therefore absorption is going to take away any of the rent growth, and therefore that's actually not a good place to invest, like in Austin, for example, over the last few years, right? So, or do you disregard that because regardless, Austin is going to do really well over the next 10 years, and so even though there's a dip now, right? So like, it's not like, my assets are C-class cash flowing assets for the most part, right? And so they cash flow, but I'm also, most of the assets that I have is not something that I necessarily want to hold for the next 20, 30 years, right? Maybe eventually I want to trade up to commercial buildings that are a little bit easier to manage and appreciate in value, maybe slower or have less cash flow, but are a little bit more predictable and easier to manage and all those kinds of things, right? So, yeah. And then, there's is it, what's like the single KPI? Is it the mentors that you have? Is it the books that you read? Is it the algorithm that you write? Is it your website? Is it your, is it your charisma? Is it doing the podcast? No, but who knows, right? So we're all trying stuff. We're all, gathering imperfect data and continuing to kind of continue to figure it out, right? And then anybody who says that they figured it out is full of it, right? Because nobody really knows. Everybody's kind of in the same boat, even though, obviously some people seem like they have it figured out. But I've just seen so many countless, the story of like, we'll see. So I've seen so many countless examples where somebody blah, blah, and then they turn out to be a fraud or blah, 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 and then they go bankrupt, right? And so now doesn't mean that everybody who's successful is going to go bankrupt or be a fraud, but, it's just, or somebody could be super successful, but they could be going through a divorce, or they could be dealing with health issues, so that's where the probabilistic model really helps me not go crazy with all this, because I'm just kind of like, all right, like this is another day, another data point, and just kind of like what's the best, what's the most informed decision that I can make at this time,
and that I have right now.
With the data that I have at this moment, and just keep going, right? And that's all you can do.
So one thing that is pretty unique about what you've built as compared to a lot of the folks that I've met so far and some that I've interviewed, and you've built a portfolio, 220 units, net worth of like $18 million, no partners, $100,000 a month of cash flow. How did you go from like no assets to this here without syndication, without bringing on a bunch of partners? That is very uncommon, especially I would imagine in Boston, Mass. How did you accomplish that? What were some of the baby steps that you took?
So baby steps, yeah. So first of all, I live in Boston suburbs. I invest outside of Boston. So Boston, I would never be able to get anything for cash flow. So Boston is extremely expensive. So we invest in Southern New Hampshire. We invest in Central Mass, Western Mass. So in Massachusetts, in Rhode Island, in New Hampshire, but Boston proper is just like way out of my price range, right? So that's the first part. So I just want to clarify that. But so the way that we got started was we started with vacation rentals on the Cape, Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and we purchased. We kind of like we hit the wave of Airbnb at the right time, right? So I recognized the opportunity, which was 2014. We bought our first house on the Cape, and at the time we bought it for like our family, and my mom and my wife wanted to use it as a family vacation house. And I saw the opportunity and I said, let's try to rent it out. And the pushback that I almost got through a divorce, got into a divorce. And, my mom was like, they weren't having it. They're like, what do you want to rent it out to other people? This is, and so, but I saw the opportunity. I wanted to give it a try. And so we rented it out for 1 week to try it. And we got like $5,000 for 1 week. And we're like, okay, this is a real thing, right? And so then we stopped using it, right? We furnished it, we basically, right, started renting it out, etc. And so the cash flow from that property was very high to the point where I started thinking about the next one and the next one and so forth. So so I'll give you some numbers. So we bought that first property. We just sold it actually less than a year ago, actually just about a year ago, actually exactly a year ago today, December 18th of last year.
Happy anniversary.
So we bought it for 300 and I think 65,000 or something like that. And we just sold it for $1 million. So that was in about 10 years. So it appreciated a lot of value. But the cash flow yearly was effectively, it was like year one, it was like, I don't know, 45,000 profit, right? Year two was like $50,000, right? So very quickly it was cash flowing like north of $50,000 per year after all expenses, after all the debt service, right? And so then we bought another one. Basically, the very next year, we bought another house that also started cash flowing. And it was also a pretty similar price. And we also sold that one for $4 million. And so, by the same buyer. So they bought two houses same day, both anniversary today. And so we had 3 vacation rentals that were cash flowing each north of $50,000. And so all of that money I was putting back into real estate. So that's kind of how we got started. So that was, if you calculate the cash on cash return, it basically turned out to be like year over year, it was like 100% yearly return of investment, right? So we maybe invested like $100,000 into it, and if you look over 10 years, it was like $1 million profit or something like that. So you basically $100,000 per year profit per property. So I think that was just timing and the right price. So after that, kind of like real estate values shot up on the Cape and Airbnb and all that kind of stuff. And but I quickly realized that it's not a sustainable model, because the stress of dealing with tenants and getting good reviews and all that kind of stuff. And so that's when I discovered BiggerPockets, and I started kind of discovering multifamily and quickly started transitioning. But we still kept those properties up until last year. We still have one that we're thinking about selling. So that was kind of the initial push. And then purchasing the properties, like the first property we purchased was 6 units that, again, at the time prices were much lower. And so the 6-unit property was $685,000. And now, like, we have it on the market for 1.8, right? So like properties just appreciated a lot in value. Doesn't mean they'll sell for 1.8, like and so now it's a lot more difficult because just everything doubled in price, and but that was kind of the thing. It was just kind of like a snowball effect, right? So we bought, like, the very first year that I started investing in multifamily, we bought a 6-unit, then a 5-unit, then a 4-unit, and then a 9-unit. So we still have all those properties, right? Then the next year we bought, and so with the down payment money, for example, I either had the money from Airbnb, right? So from vacation rentals, and also I had a pretty decent job. My wife had a pretty decent job. And so we used the funds from that. We did a couple of HELOCs, like a home equity line, so on our house, and then refinanced, whatever. Then I got my mom to use her property as a HELOC, right? So we used some of those funds to invest, right? And then the properties that we would buy were just, some of them were just really good deals that we would just use all of the cash flow to. So again, it would, so for example, we bought a 9-unit Manchester, $725,000, $750,000. That was, 6 years ago. And then at the time, the rents were maybe like $9,000, or even like, right today the rents are like $22,000 per month, right? So basically it was cash flowing like $7,000 a month or something along that line. And so all of those funds were being used to put back into real estate.
Would you buy these cash, or would you finance them?
No, finance, 25% down. 25% down, 5-year ARM, and so like some of the rates have gone up a little bit in the last year. Like, so maybe we had an interest rate of 4, now it's 6.5 or something, or 7. But because the cash flow is so strong, and because the rents have gone up so much, that it hasn't really affected us, and so we haven't had any problem with holding them and continue cash flow and so forth. So I think it was just kind of and then there was a couple of times I've had to borrow money. So I brought in partners, not as equity partners, but as debt, right? So basically I would so here's my theory on partnership, which is not in line with most people, right? But basically my theory is, like, if it's an amazing deal, why share it? If it's a bad deal, why share it? Right. So basically, it's not this. I know that doesn't. Obviously, there's some deals that are so big, and so if you want to take it down, you have to do it with a partner. So I fully get that. But if I have really strong belief in the fundamental of this deal, if it's a home run, then I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna borrow debt at 12%, right? Guaranteed, right? So I'm taking all the risk, but I keep all the equity, and so therefore, if I'm borrowing $100,000, I'm only paying back $136,000 in 3 years, whatever, right? The $12,000 per year plus some more interest, etc. As opposed to, but if the property doubles, I'm not giving up any equity. I keep all the upside, right? So if I really believe in the upside of the property, then I win. And so I've done that a few times, and so it worked in my favor, where the property's appreciated, and but I only had to pay out debt. And the other reason, selfish reason, was that they're both selfish, but the reason is that when you're doing debt, you don't have to have all of your accounting like perfect. If you have equity partners, you really have to justify like, why are you doing this maintenance? Why is this cost? Like, what happens to the cash flow? Da, da, da. Whereas here, I'm like, well, here's your, I said you give 12%, you get 12%. Right? That's it. Right? They don't care about anything else because that's not in their wheelhouse. I keep it. That's for me to worry about. And so, because of that, I've given myself some freedom not to be perfect on that, but it also has given me some extra time where I don't have to generate reports. I don't have to talk to investors about how the property is doing. All of that stuff is not really relevant because, all I did is borrow debt. And so going forward, I would continue to do that as long as market, now the market is very different now. And so for me to find a really good deal to justify debt, like I don't want to take a risk where if the property goes sideways, right, or doesn't perform as well, but I also might not even try to buy that kind of property because why risk to get something, I have borrowed debt a few times.
How are you adjusting your strategy in the market now? As you mentioned, prices have maybe doubled or tripled in the areas that you were buying, and it sounds like it'd become much harder to not be over leveraged if you're using a bunch of debt and you have a lot of debt service. Are you exploring equity partnerships now? Are you looking more so at just buying deals in cash out of your own pocket or with a higher down payment? How are you adjusting how you're looking at purchases?
I think I'm still hoping to. So every time I've bought a deal, I thought I'm never going to get another deal again. That was always my fear. Every time I found another deal, I have that fear right now. As in, like, I haven't bought anything in 8 months, and I'm kind of like, nothing pencils, right? Nothing makes sense. Everything is overpriced, and so. But I feel, with that said, I'll tell you this: right, the last 2 years, the market has been kind of tough, right? My best deal came a year ago, or a year and a few months. My best deal was a year and like 3 months. We closed on a property, a 24 unit that we bought at $100,000 a door. That when we purchased it, the rent roll was about $25,000 a month, somewhere in that ballpark. Today we have it like north of $39,000, without having to do any heavy lifts, right? So we basically, so if you do the math, right, it brings in 39 and change. Like I think it's at 39, whatever. Like we'll just round it up to 40, right? And the monthly debt service is 11. If you add up all the maintenance and taxes and insurance and all this kind of stuff, it's another like $12,000. So we're all in for about 22. So add some buffer, right? So just say $25,000 to operate the building. You're bringing in 39. You're getting, and let's just say you're getting $12,000 cash flow. So if you're getting $12,000 cash flow, that's $144,000 a year on an investment of $600,000 down, which is basically 144 divided by 600 is like what, 25%, right? So it's roughly like 25%, which is insane, right? 1 year into it. And that's not counting like appreciation or equity pay down or tax benefits, right? That kind of stuff, right? So that's probably our best deal, right? So that's our best deal also because it's a pretty nice property. And so the point is that a broker called me, like it was just a good deal, and I knew that I wanted it. I already tried to buy it before directly from the owners. And so the point is that like deals happen, right? And so why, so just as long as you cast a net wide enough, right, eventually there's an opportunity, right? So for that deal, I'd have no problem, having debt partners and, because I know that the numbers support it. But right now my strategy is try, you have to be creative and you have to think outside the box, obviously, right? And so right now I'm trying to learn about commercial. I'm trying to focus on, like, I've defined what I want the outcome to be like, which is basically like, let's say I want to add $50,000 of cash flow in the next 2 years. And so based on that, I'm kind of building up that funnel of what kind of assets I need to buy at what prices, what is the monthly cash flow, what's the monthly rent roll versus the purchase price, right? So for example, very roughly, if I want north of $10,000 cash flow, I probably need a building where I buy it for like $4 million and it brings in like $60,000 a month. Well, obviously, there's no way that's going to happen. Buying something for $4 million and it's going to bring in $60,000 a month. unless you find some miraculous opportunity where it's not going to be with Marcus Millichap, right? It's not going to be with major broker. It has to be just something that, right, somehow, right, or you have like extra risk that you're willing to tolerate, right, or extra risk that you can de-risk or something, right? So I'm exploring different strategies. Like I'm more in commercial. Like I've been kind of dabbling in the commercial space with a bunch of different folks and other groups and trying to understand that space, which I think there's a lot of interesting upside in that world from the standpoint of, easier tenants, more predictable cash flow, those kinds of things. But also it's expensive. Maybe the yield is not as high, right? But some people, if you can figure out that game and if you can have some kind of an angle, you can probably do very, very well.
Going back to that deal that you said was your best deal yet, what was the opportunity there? Why was it that the landlord wasn't charging market rate rents and you guys could come in and just kind of lift it up a little bit without doing much of a rent out?
Great question. So I think they were just not looking to be landlords, right? So they bought the building 2 years before that, even cheaper, and they bought it even cheaper. So they actually did pretty well also. They made money. So the person that sold it to them sold me a building just down the street that also does really well. So, and he also was substantially cheaper than it could have been. So also very good numbers. Basically, he sold me a 10-unit nearby that was $50,000 a door, where the rent roll now is just under $15,000 a month. And it didn't require, so I bought it for $500,000 and the rent roll was like just under $15K for 10 units. And I pay heat and hot water. So there's some expenses and, all this kind of stuff. But so basically it was kind of like a rapid market shift. It was, so like rents growing, et cetera, not being fully aware. So it's kind of like opportunity of what the rents maybe could be or where they're heading. But then the people that had sold it, they bought the building. I think they bought it for so I bought it for 2.4. I think they bought it for 1.1 or 1.2 just a few years before. And then they put in, they changed the roofs. They did a bunch of work. They rehabbed a bunch of the apartments. So when I got the building, it didn't need a lot of work, right? So I think they put in $500,000 into it. And I think they kind of flipped it and they didn't want to hold it. And they weren't really thinking about refinancing and holding it and seeing that, there's more potential here where eventually, and I think they were more, they were builders. And so they didn't want to deal with tenants and all this kind of stuff. So I was just kind of in a position where, because I owned an asset just down the street, I was one of the first people to be called about this asset when they wanted to sell by a broker, and kind of the price made sense. And, when they wanted 2.4, I offered them 2. They said no. I said 2.1. They said no. I said 2.2, and then I got to, I guess it's 2.4. They just knew their number and they got their number and that was it.
Have you done many creative deals, like seller carryback, that kind of stuff? Or do you focus more on price?
Yeah, I haven't had the luck. To be honest, every deal is unique in that none of the deals are easy when, everything requires some level of negotiating or something. But, I had one deal from direct mail out of my portfolio. So I'm hopeful that wasn't an outlier and that maybe I can do some more of those. And otherwise, I've tried creative stuff and it hasn't worked. But also, I would say that on the flip side, I've had a lot of people try, when they try to buy my assets, they try to do direct, or not direct, but they try to do some kind of seller financing, and it hasn't worked for them either. So, so as in I'm I don't want to partner in this. I don't, so I think but I know that a lot of obviously very successful people, it works, and there's tons of books written about it, and there's whole masterminds on this and all this kind of stuff. So, but I haven't had success on either side. Structuring, it hasn't materialized. I mean, regarding the debt, my philosophy, I think, is if the deal is so good that it just makes a lot of sense, and if it just cash flows now, right, or within 6 months, then it should be relatively not that hard to bring on a partner. It's purely a theory, because I've only brought, a debt partner or something, because I've only done this a few times. I've brought it, I probably borrowed a total of $400,000 And so, but my feeling is like, if I had a deal right now under contract that was like, $10 million and it was just, but it's worth 20, like, worth 20, right? I should be able to get people to join me.
If you were starting all over today with everything that you know now, right? You've built up a portfolio of 220 units plus. If you were to start over today in this current market, as you mentioned, this market's a little different than maybe markets 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. What are some of the things that you would pay attention to, and how would you maybe shift your strategy as you're trying to get into the game today?
One of the main, so I think you have to be a cat when everybody's a dog, right? So you have to just think a little bit. So I still to this day house hack, right? So, like we have a big house in a nice area, but our mortgage is largely, like we pay very little monthly to live in a big house with a full family, all this kind of stuff. Like it's a 5,000 plus square foot house, and our mortgage is like, not mortgage, like our whole payment, like including utilities and taxes, insurance, all this stuff is like 2,500, right, in the Boston area, right? So like, because, right, it's, so that's crazy. But so that has been a huge part in this whole journey, right? Huge part, because if I had, if somebody buys a house right now, so like in Boston, a lot of houses are like $2.5 million, right? So if and that's not even a fancy house, that's just like a normal nice house, right? So if you do that, your monthly payment, including it, is probably like, I don't know, $15,000 a month, right? And so if you're not subsidizing it, if you're not putting a big down payment, if you don't have, that's $15,000 every single month. That's very difficult, right? So that gives me a huge advantage. So if you keep your needs low, and I drive a truck, so that helps. Whenever so I think those little things, right? So Airbnb, I've Airbnb'd our own house. Like when I used to live with my wife before kids, we used to live in a townhouse, and then we went to Europe, 10 years ago when we were just starting out. There was a condo association, so people weren't very happy, but we left for a month. We rented it to a family that came and stayed at our house, and we got like $8,000 for that month, right? So that was like 10 years ago, right? So that's kind of like actually where the idea was born, is, you can do this, and right. So that's where I started kind of, I remember those days very, very well. And that was a huge part of my journey. I studied computer science, and I aspired, to be, all these, I was very intellect driven, but the things that actually built wealth for me was like the just grit and hard work, and just like being able to endure discomfort, right? So I think that was the exact opposite, right? I mean, I'm sure that I make pretty good decisions on average, right? And so I'm sure that having a background and reading all these books, I'm sure that helps. But a lot of it is kind of like, how can you Airbnb? I used to have like a Infinity GS37. I would, it's like a stick sedan, and I would drive like couches and mattresses on top of my car to get to the Airbnb, right? I mean, swear to God, right? So you can just imagine, I have countless pictures of this stuff, right? So we would go to estate sales and leave with like a car full of, furniture to drive to these houses and, save money and, all this kind of stuff, right? The stress of getting a call on the weekend from a tenant who is like expecting something, and it's like the trade-off there is like, if you deliver like a really nice product, you're not making a very high yield. If you deliver a really shitty product, you might high yield, but a lot of stress, right? So you have to find that, right, that balance where you can still get good reviews, but right, and it's very imperfect, because if you want no stress, you $5 million house and rent it for $100 a night, 5-star reviews every single day, but you're not making any money, right? So you gotta, but we bought so we found the Nagel, we made it work, but it came with stress and kind of, taking on risk and all this kind of stuff. So I think in today's market, I think it might be a little bit slower, but I also think you have to be optimistic, and I think there's an opportunity. I'm sure there's an opportunity somewhere, whether it's direct mail, whether it's, networking, if there's something somewhere where somebody's overlooking that gives you that into, and my philosophy was, my freedom number, let's just say, there's, we spend, let's say, 25,000 a month or something like that as a family, right? In the Boston area, like with travel, all this kind of stuff. My goal was, get to 30 and then you're good, right? And so, okay, well, how do you get to 30? Well, you get to 30 by getting to 2, and then from 2 getting to 4, and then 6, and then 8 and 12, right? It's not right. And so when I had an Airbnb that was generating 5,000 and then another one that was generating 5, I was like, okay, like I'm actually like a third of the way there. And then house hacking, that's another, 5 or whatever, plus another Airbnb. Well, now I'm close to $20,000. Now I just need now I bought a multifamily, 4 in the first year. At that, like literally that year, I reached my goal, right? So it doesn't take like it doesn't, right? It just takes cash flowing properties that can generate, and then the cash flow is like, for year 1 it's going to be $2,000, but then eventually it's 3, and then once you have 5 properties and each one of them, right? And so it eventually kind of builds up and stabilizes, and then once you reach that freedom number, that's all you really need. Like after that, it becomes kind of like a game. That was kind of the journey for me. I fully acknowledge that it's harder, but I also think I believe it's possible. You just have to think and read and hustle but I'm also I'm very well aware that a lot of it is timing, a lot of it is luck. You have to put yourself in a position to get lucky. I kind of got lucky, I could have the properties that I bought, I could have not bought them, because then the seller could have not sold to them, and then instead of having 20 properties right now, I would have had none, because 20 people would have made a different decision.
What's your best advice in putting yourself to put yourself in a position to get lucky? How did you best prepare yourself to take advantage of those opportunities when they presented themselves?
I think it's like be ready. So by being ready, I mean make sure that you understand the numbers so well and you can recognize an opportunity so well, kind of like doing the homework in the dark, so that when it's ready, you can act without hesitation. So very clearly that the price per door in this area is, $100,000 a door. So when you see that it's $70,000 a door, but only requires $10,000 investment per door, you're going to be at $80,000. There's some value. You know to jump on Rentometer and check what the rents are. You know to put up like a Facebook ad, to see what the rent demand is, or you just have like a clear. I've kind of brainwashed myself with like Bigger Pockets at the time, that when the first multifamily property came up, I just knew this is it. This is it. Let's do it, right? Even though it's a huge leap, especially when I didn't have like an uncle or a dad that was doing multifamily, right? So I didn't I just had to do it, right? So it's kind of like being prepared, and then when that happens, then it's just be obnoxiously aggressive, right? As in the broker might, so just call the broker 20 times and just, right? And we all have different ways of just convincing them that you're the buyer. You might be a smooth talker, somebody else might be you just have to works, and it still doesn't always work, right? So that's where where you give yourself grace when it doesn't work. Just keep going, right? I just had a deal that I really wanted. It was in Rhode Island, and it was kind of a good opportunity. I must have called the broker 12 times the day that it was listed, and then she still gave it to somebody else. And what can I do, right? I did everything I could. I wasn't upset. It just it happens, right? But at that time, I knew this is my time. This is my time to this is the property that I want. I believe that it's the right numbers.
Looking back on your life, obviously we've gone through, there's so much more. And if you guys want to reach out to Mike, we can always put his information in his social media contacts, so you can reach out and have a further conversation. But we've had a conversation so far about moving here, going to college and studying software engineering, going to Harvard, getting software engineering degree, working at IBM for a little bit, and then you made your own startup, and then you started to buy real estate properties. You've had a great career in many different respects. What do you think that 9-year-old Mike Preshman would think of where you're at right now? The kid that came from Ukraine with his mom.
I'd be proud. He would be a little bit in disbelief. I mean, I think I'm very careful about labeling, success, or I just feel thankful to have, with everything going on in the world and all this kind of stuff, right? I have a philosophy around not being greedy with just anything really, but basically from an emotional standpoint, you have a positive 10 emotion and you have a negative 10. I'm good with a positive 1. I have a positive 1, I'm content, right? So contentment for me is a lot more important than than kind of like reaching these, peak state or euphoria or some extraordinary net worth, all this kind of stuff. Because if my kids are healthy, if I'm healthy, if I have something to think about in the shower, if I can go rucking and get some fresh air, I want to live a big life, and I try to, and I'm pretty ambitious and optimistic about things. But with that said, right? So to frame that question, like I think that proud to kind of be going through this journey and learning and trials and tribulations and continued like having built a this sustainable philosophy around what works for me, and it kind of like allows for me to overcome challenges with a little bit of grace, which is another whole topic around. So anyways, he'd be proud and he'd be pleased, and so within that frame, I'm living in my mind, a positive one emotion or life in the sense that am I Bill Gates? No, right? But I'm okay, right? So, and that's all that matters, right? As in, like, I have enough food. I can pay my house payments. We can enjoy life as a family, and I hope to do bigger things. I hope to donate $100 million. I hope to write a book one day. I hope to, there's a lot of things that I aspire to do, but I'm on that journey. But having a philosophy of life is that's what I wanted to say. Is I had no philosophy. Like I didn't have a dad, and I'm not religious, and so like figuring out that philosophy through books and through is a big one. Like having a philosophy of life is better than having no philosophy, and so for me that's been kind of like combining meditation and stoicism and all this pieces together, kind of aligned with something, right? And so I'm glad to have some version of philosophy of life.
And I want to thank you for that philosophy that you shared, the Hero on a Mission book. It sounds like some of that philosophy may be coming from there as well. I think that's something where no matter where you're at, whether you're working a W-2 job and maybe you don't even want to have an entrepreneurship kind of route, maybe you just want to focus on having a good life and like having a great family and doing really cool things, you can still implement that Hero on a Mission framework or aspect, thinking about what's a challenging thing that I want to do in my life so I can change who I am for the better. I think that applies to everybody. So I think that's a great takeaway for everyone. And Mike, I want to thank you for hopping on today, for spending an hour and a half with me, chatting through your life story, your portfolio, your journey through your real estate career. If folks want to get in touch with you, how can they reach out?
So we have a website, bnpliving.com. You can email me directly, mpresh@gmail.com. That's mpresh@gmail.com. Happy to chat. I'm very open. Love these topics, and please reach out.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Mike. And thank you, everyone, for tuning into another episode of Capital Conversations. We will see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, AJ.